Hello, everybody. Welcome, everybody, to Purple Haze Podcast. I am your lovely host, Isaac, here today. And the Vikings, they improved to 2-4 after beating the Chicago Bears at Soldier Field. Final score 19-13. This game was drunk, basically, for the Vikings, mainly on offense. Basically, it was a absolute drag fest right there for the Vikings, but it doesn't matter as long as you did it, I suppose. I guess we'll go through stats. As the time of possession battle, the Bears held the ball 11 minutes longer than the Vikings. That's crazy. And the Vikings stats, their total yards, 220 total yards, 174 passing yards, 46 rushing yards. They forced 3 turnovers, 12 first downs, 2 of 13 on the third down conversions, and they got 5 sacks. As for the Bears, 275 yards, 113 passing yards, 162 rushing yards, 1 turnover, 18 first downs, 6 for 14 on the third down conversions, 2 sacks. Now let's get to the good stuff, I guess, first, starting with not really a whole lot on offense. Let's just call it what it is. It was god-awful. Besides a couple players, Cam Akers had, yes, he technically had a rush for like 8 yards. It's not great, but we just did not really utilize him. I wish we would have used Cam Akers more, though, because Alexander Madison, okay, I feel like Cam Akers could definitely battle with Ty Chandler for the running back 1, besides basically instead of like the running back 2, because I will talk about Alexander Madison, but right now I feel like it should be between Cam Akers or Ty Chandler right now, because they're more explosive than Alexander Madison so far this season, and so that's what I think. Jordan Addison, basically the best player on offense. 3 catches, 28 yards, a touchdown. Not godly numbers, but he still made the most of his targets when they were necessary. So I'll give Jordan Addison the benefit of the doubt here. He was probably the MVP of the offense. The rest, not so much. We will get to that. I think basically the whole entire defense, basically, they played lights out. They played their ass off yesterday. They basically deserve to get paid by the offense. Needs to donate their paychecks to the defense right now. Shout out to Brian Flores too for that spectacular game plan against the Chicago Bears. Basically, only allowing they had, as a team, they had 5 sacks, 6 TFLs. They basically brought consistent pressure nonstop. Maybe the running game was a little bit ticky-tacky, but whatever. It is what it is. I'm not worried about that. And I said you basically needed to stop DJ Moore. And did they ever? He had 5 catches for only 51 yards. He basically only had 7 yards in the first half. So the defense played lights out against them, and they only held Justin Fields to just 58 yards of passing and Badgett to like 83 yards. I feel like 60 yards or something. But, correct me if I'm wrong, but I forgot to write that down in my notes, so we'll go with that but shout out to Brian Flores for going through hell and back, because that defense was out there for such a long time, because once the defense got off the field, the defense got back in like that. So it was just 3 and out after 3 and out, especially in the second half. We'll get to that just in a second. But shout out to the defense. They were balling. Jordan Hicks. He had himself a day yesterday. Yes, he did. 10 tackles, one interception, had a pass breakup, and also had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. He was all over the place, and come to shove, he might be at least a top 10 linebacker in the NFL because now he is being very, very flashy out there against the Chicago Bears. He's getting better every single game, it feels like. Jordan Hicks, I mean, he's playing absolutely outstanding, and I love to see it. Danielle Hunter, I mean, he's basically the same guy. It's a classic Danielle Hunter game. Had 2 TFLs, had 2 sacks. It feels like every single game he's played, he's had at least 1 sack a game. So he's already got 8 sacks and it's 6 games in. Wow. I mean, his value is definitely high, and push come to shove, he could definitely be traded week 8 after week 8, and we can definitely get a higher draft pick, a higher value, at least a first round at the very least. So Danielle Hunter, of course, he played great. Josh Metellus, he keeps on making plays all the time. Had 2 TFLs, had a sack, and also had a fumble force. He basically was getting after, but he also, not only did he have those numbers, he also got after the quarterback pretty effectively. So Josh Metellus, he's just making plays. I feel like the safety, if Harrison Smith is no longer on the team, I trust Josh Metellus. He is more than enough to make up for that. So Josh Metellus, a good game by him. And also, Byron Murphy also had himself a good game. I mean, I want to say from the previous 5 games for Byron Murphy and just this game is night and day. He had a TFL, he had an interception, which was basically the last possession of the Vikings. He also had 3 passes defended. After he got cooked on one play alone, it was bad. I was like, oh man, Byron Murphy, what are you doing? And then but he got his head back in the game and he made plays against the receivers. So Byron Murphy, absolutely big improvement right there from him. Love to see it. Now let's get to some of the annoying things that happened during the game. The Alexander Madison, I mean, he basically dropped he dropped a pass, basically could have been a first down. He only had 2.4 yards a carry. That's inexcusable, basically. But respectably, I think he basically is a reliable backup than he is a starter. Cam Akers and Ty Chandler need to be, at least one of those two need to be a starter. And the second half offense, and TJ Hawkinson, again with the dropped passes, again, it's looking very, very dull for this dude right now. I mean, maybe he needs to rest a few games to get his mind back in the game, or maybe he's just not that good. Either one of the two is true, so I feel like he needs to maybe rest and put in Johnny Munt in there so that way he can relax and then go back out there and play what we know he can. As far as the second half offense, it was downright pathetic. I mean, good lord. The second half offense, they had, I'm not, okay, the last possession from the Vikings is where they drained clock, whatever. The second half, however, was terrible. They had 1 first down, and all 5 of their possessions were 3-and-outs. I mean, just as soon as basically they just fell apart. The offensive line was kind of Swiss cheese at this point. Garrett Bradbury, I mean, this dude's getting pushed around. And Ed Ingram, he is who he's always been. You already know we already know who he is. As far as like the play calling by Kevin play calling was really, really easy and predictable. In the second half, you were doing predictable run, run, pass, and then you're punting the ball. You're playing right where the defense wants you. You only average 2.1 yards a carry. Why are you running the ball in the second half? So that doesn't make sense at all. So it was not working, and just the play calling in general was super scared. It honestly looked like they were playing not to lose in the second half. It almost looked like Mike Zimmer all over again, which is very, very concerning for the nonetheless. But we'll see how the rest of the season goes as far as like what happens. And Kirk Cousins, I mean, this is probably the worst season that I've ever seen Cousins. It's really not getting any better. 67% of his passes were completed, 181 yards, a touchdown. It was checkdowns basically on 3rd and long, basically wanting to get off the field immediately, just checking down to TJ Hawkinson, because TJ Hawkinson had the most targets, more than the receivers have. And that goes down to the quarterback. You're checking down and wanting to get off the field immediately. And this is just basically getting out of hand. I would say you need to give Jaren Hall a call. And I already seen enough of Cousins, basically, as far as I'm concerned, because it's just not going to work. We already know who this was. My MVP for this game, as far as I'm concerned, Jordan Hicks. I mean, give this dude basically the game. I guess either Jordan Hicks or Brian Flores. I guess we could go, but I'm gonna say Brian Flores and the defense. They basically played their butts off yesterday, and they were fantastic. It was not a fun game to watch, but they still did get the win, nonetheless, I suppose. We'll see what happens. We'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you haven't already, and subscribe if you haven't. Skol.